us. And then I'm going to hit record on the audio in 3, 2, 1. Hi, everyone. This is Sandy Cruz from Sandy K Nutrition. And today I have Dr. Robert Wolfe back again to talk to us all about amino acids. And we've got some updates. It's going to be a great conversation. Dr. Robert Wolfe is the co-founder of the Amino Company, which was formed to bring his own patented amino acid formulas developed over 40 years of clinical research to the public. Dr. Wolfe attended Berkeley and was a 3-sport varsity athlete. He continued his education for his PhD in clinical research, focusing on regulation of muscle metabolism, particularly as affected by aging and stressors. Dr. Wolfe also served as a faculty member at Harvard Medical School for 9 years and is currently the director for the Center for Translational Research in Aging and Longevity at the Reynolds Institute on Aging in Little Rock, Arkansas. He has published over 500 peer-reviewed research articles, 3 books, and holds many active patents. And I'm just so excited because, I feel like people are starting to catch on with amino acids, and I love to see all the research that Amino Co has done. And so we have to start, of course, with why so passionate about amino acids, Dr. Wolfe.
Well, I think that the major thing I came across when I first started my research career was at the Shriners Hospital for Burn Children at Harvard. And these kids were severely burned, on an average about 70% of third-degree burns. And the rehab was really a major problem. And the thing that limited these kids so much was tremendous muscle loss due to the stress of the recovery from the burns, to the point where they really couldn't even get back to being able to do recess at school or any sort of physical activity. And so it really inspired me to try to understand why the muscle was being lost at such a fast rate, because it wasn't burned itself. There was no particular physical damage to it, and yet the muscle just poured off the bones. You could just see it literally disappearing, and so hard to get it back on. And that led to a long series of studies to really identify the factors that are key in causing muscle loss, as well as maintaining or even increasing muscle function with training and things like that. And as those studies evolved, of course, that's all ivory tower stuff if it doesn't translate to something that actually can be used to improve muscle function and muscle mass. And that led me to understanding the role of the essential amino acids as key regulators of muscle metabolism, and in fact, metabolism throughout the entire body. But the focus was mainly on muscle and how a healthy muscle really affects all the rest of the body. And as one thing led to another, and one study opened the door to the next, to where we realized that the nutritional value of essential amino acids far transcended anything specifically just with burned children, but really healthy nutrition and aging and all sorts of different physiological and nutritional circumstances benefited from these free essential amino acid formulations. So I think the excitement in my mind all came from the fact that it was possible to extrapolate and translate the basic molecular studies that we started off with to actual formulations that you could put on the kitchen table and actually benefit from on a daily basis.
Mm. Okay, so you mentioned that it was children. Typically, children are able to build muscle. So this is relating directly to inactivity and muscle loss. Does that make sense?
Well, it's part we also interested the part two-part answer, I guess.
Okay.
The inactivity is a factor, and in fact, our first studies in the adult population were done in conjunction with NASA because of the loss of muscle with spaceflight, which is in essence inactivity because there's no resistance to anything that they do. And so they lose muscle at a very fast rate in spaceflight. And we simulated that by enforced bed rest for 30 days in normal, healthy volunteers, which paralleled the amount of muscle loss in spaceflight due entirely to inactivity. And so that was definitely a major focus, and that's certainly true in the burn kids. Was a major factor to the point where they actually pin the legs so that they can't move at all, so that the new transplanted skin can actually take and grow. But the rate of loss of muscle with severe injury and any sort of intensive care unit or serious sickness is much faster than just due to the muscle losses, muscle loss due to the inactivity, but rather it's really a function of the stress combined with the inactivity. The two things are working together to cause the muscle to just peel off the bone, literally, and so that inactivity is definitely part of it, but it's not the whole story.
And I guess, so many of us know this. When we're not feeling well, we're not eating well either, right? We're not necessarily taking in all the nutrients that our body needs.
Yeah, that's a big problem. And I think that where I noticed it most obviously was in the older populations, which for a variety of reasons stop eating as much high quality protein. And yet they're in a state where they really need actually even more because the normal amount of dietary protein doesn't really have the same impact in somebody that's older as opposed to a young, healthy person. But yet to get an older person to say, eat an extra steak a day, it's just not going to happen because of a whole variety of reasons. Taste preferences change and cost and food preparation and a variety of reasons that isn't a viable alternative. So that having a nutritional formulation that gives you sort of more bang for the buck, so to speak, that a very concise, small amount of something that you can just drink in a convenient format that gives you the same benefits as a big steak or some other kind of dietary protein really was an important aspect in developing products that could be conveniently added to the normal diet without influencing any aspect of making you feel full or that they were difficult to drink, just that they were small, compact nutritional formulations that can provide a big benefit for a small amount of actual volume consumed.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, remember back, I think they still do this. They give that, horrible formula a boost and in the
Yeah.
hospital, like, anyway.
Yeah, well, it's really and we did a study on that. They were giving Ensure, which is
Yeah.
very similar to Boost. They put it on, and every person over 65 in the hospital, our hospital, got a bottle of Ensure on every meal tray, so 3 times a day. And we did a pretty extensive study of it and found that there are two big problems with the traditional dietary supplements for older people. One of which is that whatever calories you eat in that format, they cut out that amount of calories in the other normal dietary intake. So when you talk about that kind of a dietary supplement like Boost or Ensure, it's not a supplement, it's a substitute for whatever they would be eating otherwise. So it better be better. It has to be better than what they're dropping out of their diet. But in reality, they aren't better at all. And in fact, what we see when weight is put on with Ensure Boost is predominantly body fat is increased, and the weight gain is body fat. It's not muscle. It's not healthy weight gain. And if anything, it decreases the intake of the good food that would normally be part of the diet. So that was really a significant inspiration to develop something that was much more effective and specifically targeting the metabolic problems as opposed to just a general carbohydrate, fat, protein with not very high quality protein that really has never been shown to be particularly beneficial in any circumstance.
Yeah, yeah. I guess it's just going with that theory, that age-old theory, just to add protein. So they think that all protein is equal and they're not considering the quality. when they created those formulas, right?
Well, that's definitely part of the problem. It's a long-term problem that I've worked very hard on, independently of the EAA story, and that is how to evaluate and quantify protein quality, because there's a tremendous variability in dietary proteins as to how much benefit they actually provide. And unfortunately, not surprisingly, but the proteins that are cheapest and easiest to deal with from a manufacturing standpoint are generally the low quality proteins. So that this is the heart of the problem with these nutritional supplements that are just kind of meal substitutes, that they really don't provide the protein nutrition that is optimal for any circumstance, particularly for older people.
Yeah. Okay. So I have a few questions, but one of them is some people listening to this, they're going to think amino acids, they won't even understand amino acids. And so we should probably explain what they are and how they correlate to protein.
Sure. The amino acids are the building blocks of protein, and there are 21 dietary amino acids that are in protein that we eat. Out of those, 21 amino acids, 9 of those amino acids have to be eaten because they can't be produced by metabolic processes in the body, and those are called the essential amino acids. And they're actually dietary requirements for each of those essential amino acids, that we have to eat a certain amount of and a known amount of each one of those essential amino acids on a regular basis, or there will be adverse physiological effects, even major effects affecting all aspects of the whole body function. So those 9 essential amino acids have to be eaten. And as it turns out, and what our research showed over the years, is that these essential amino acids are absolutely part of the production of new protein in the body. So just to step back a little bit here, our body is composed of about 3,000 different proteins. And these proteins in the body are continually breaking down and being reproduced or resynthesized. And that process breaks down the older proteins that aren't really functioning as well as they might, and replacing them with new, better functioning proteins. And it's called protein turnover. And that process of breaking down the not so functional protein and replacing it with new, better functioning protein is crucial to our protein health in our body. The amino acids that are released from these proteins in our body can be reused and produce the new proteins to some extent, but only to some extent, because some of the amino acids that are released from the breakdown of these proteins are oxidized and lost to the body, excreted in the urine or feces, and so we don't have access to those to rebuild new proteins in the body. And that's what the essential amino acids are absolutely required for, because the amount that is lost from the protein breakdown has to be replaced by dietary essential amino acids that can't be produced in the body. So that these essential amino acids are part of the body protein that can't be provided by metabolic reactions. They have to be eaten. And you need all of the 21 amino acids to produce an intact protein. As soon as you run short of any one of those, the process of synthesis of the new protein stops, so that you have to have all of the essential amino acids, and not only just in a general sense, but they have to be available in the proportions required to produce the specific proteins that are needed to replace the ones that have been broken down.
Okay. So what you're saying is, in order to do certain things like build muscle, we must get all 9. They work as a symphony.
Exactly. And the way proteins are built is that there is a template called messenger RNA that comes from the DNA in our cells that has a code of exactly the order in which the amino acids have to be linked together to produce the specific protein. And those proteins are produced by linking one, then the next, then the next, then the next, in the exact code that's required. So it may be the first amino acid is methionine. That would be then join with lysine as the next amino acid, and so on and so on and so on. So you get to and there may be hundreds and hundreds of these amino acids in this exactly coded string of amino acids that are linked together. And as soon as you come to a spot where now you need the next one up is leucine, but you don't have enough leucine in the cell to satisfy that link, the whole process stops. And what has been produced to that point is degraded and it's lost, and there's no new protein produced. So this is what's called the limiting amino acid. Whatever the essential amino acid that's in the least proportion to its requirement to be linked into this long chain of amino acids is what's called the limiting amino acid. And that's the amino acid that we want to specifically target to increase, so that now the linking of all these amino acids can be continuing on to completion of the entire intact protein.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm gonna, this is along the same lines of what you're saying, but when I was, and funny thing is that my instructor, his name was also, no, he was Dr. Wolfe. Fun fact though, he had Wolfe in his name, but he's passed since. He was a physician in Germany, and he taught us about how we're eating multiple different proteins, that it can actually affect our metabolism if we're eating, like, let's say, people are doing this protein loading where they're eating all these different types of protein, and the body will only absorb, I think what you said, the lowest amount of the I might not describe it right, the lowest amount of the amino acid profile of the protein that you're eating. Am I describing it correctly?
Well, I think that's the general idea. What it's probably referring to is the fact that we don't eat just one protein. We eat a mixture of proteins, and the limiting amino acid in each of these dietary proteins may be different. So if you
Yes.
combine specific complementary proteins, you can have a much higher quality than either one independently. And that's why, particularly if you're a vegan or a vegetarian, you need to pay attention to complementary proteins, because most of the plant-based proteins are deficient in one or more specific essential amino acids. But if you pair that protein with a different protein that's deficient in a different amino acid, then the two together can be called complementary, and they'll have a higher quality than either one independently. What we're doing with the essential amino acid mixtures is really smoothing over that process, because it doesn't always work out that the complementary proteins actually match very well, and they still may not provide the optimal amount. So we're taking the baseline normal dietary protein intake, whether it be from multiple sources or whatever your normal dietary protein is, and having a mixture which makes an optimal profile in the blood of the combination of what you've absorbed from your normal dietary protein and then the extra supplement that we have provided, so that that ratio of amino acids in the blood is optimal for whatever purpose: building muscle, neurotransmitters, immune function, all the different aspects of protein and amino acids in the body require specific amounts of each essential amino acid, which we don't usually get in a normal diet. And we're adding the supplement to smooth that out, so you get exactly what you really need for that circumstance.
So this is, I guess, where the conversation on, are all proteins created equal? Are all amino acid supplements created equal? And that is not the case, because you guys have done some pretty incredible studies. For example, if you want to support your liver, it's a specific ratio of the amino acids needed to support your liver, correct?
Yeah, I think that, that we've kind of gone through in the last 20 years, I think, two phases of the essential amino acid story. Back in, I guess it was about early 1990 that I've published the first study showing the potential benefits of essential amino acid supplements and why they were superior to intact protein supplements, as well as formulations like branched chain amino acids. And So the whole concept of essential amino acids was pretty new, and grew very slowly as our research continued to show different circumstances and specific formulations that were beneficial. People gradually started to understand the concept of essential amino acids being different from protein or branched-chain amino acids, but really providing a benefit that can't be attained with any other kind of protein or amino acid source. But then as we became more sophisticated with it, it became evident that there are specific formulations that benefit particular circumstances. And you point out to the liver for being one, but actually the patent office understands the importance of this different formulation, in that I have 14 different patents on different formulations for specific applications. And what I think we're in now as a sort of a phase 2 is that now the essential amino acid supplements are widespread. When we first started, nobody had ever heard of essential amino acids. Now, if you look on Amazon or any sort of website search, you'll see a whole bunch of different, probably 100 or more different outlets that sell essential amino acids. So the general concept is there, but the fact that they're not all the same is not well appreciated. So that the general consensus that, yeah, essential amino acids are better than other formats is phase 1. But phase 2 is understanding that the research on the different conditions in which specific formulations are applied really matters, and that you'll have much greater success, for example, in reducing liver fat and improving liver health with the formulation that was particularly formulated for that purpose and investigated in clinical studies and patented and documented to be beneficial than another formulation which may have all the essential amino acids but not in the formulation that's optimal for that particular application. And so that's why I say we're really sort of in phase 2 of trying to emphasize the importance of the specific research projects that have underlay the development of these different applications and document that these are the formulations that are beneficial to the outcome that you're looking for.
Because it all really goes down to the proper ratios of those essential amino acids, and then in the order so that your body will absorb it in the right order, right?
Exactly.
So, okay, that's important to note and even pause, because I've heard all too many times, oh, I'll just grab this formula on Amazon, like you pointed out. And bioavailability is important too, right? And how are they even made? Like these are all questions that come in my mind, because I always look to quality of whatever I'm taking. So how do we even know any of this? How do we identify that? I guess
Well,
the studies, right? Because you guys have the studies.
that's what we have now. I think that it's a big challenge, what you're asking, because the consumer is not often given the information that's needed to answer the questions that you're concerned about. And the FDA doesn't actually regulate dietary supplements, so that to go through the FDA is a very laborious process, which is really designed entirely for the drug world, and very difficult for any sort of nutritional supplement. But because of the importance of what you're saying, we've actually started that pathway and made with a great deal of effort, I'd say, made the first phase of approval from the FDA for the liver supplement. And when we going down this route for the other formulations as well, because that's really ultimately the only way that we can distinguish a product, other than just by reputation and the publications that support it. But the current lack of regulation of any sort, and I'm not a big advocate of government regulation, but it's really like the Wild West. You have no idea where and how things have been produced, where they are, if they actually even contain what they say they contain. And this has always been a big problem in the nutritional supplement field. And I think that that's why the consumer really needs to do their own investigation on what seems to be the most reliable product, and appreciate that, because the government isn't really helping us out in identifying the specific way in which any of these things are made. And so it's you're raising a challenging dilemma. We know that these products can give us real metabolic benefits, but not all products are the same. And how does the consumer really identify the ones that are worth paying? And of course, the other thing that always goes along with what you said is that to actually meet all the purity standards and stability and all of that is more expensive than to just dump some things together. And some
Yeah.
of the amino acids are a lot cheaper than others. Some are much more soluble. Some don't taste as bad. If you just go for the cheapest, best tasting aminos, then the consumer will think, "Man, this is pretty good," but it may not, and almost certainly doesn't have the optimal formulation to target the metabolic response that we're looking for.
So, Dr. Wolf, what would you say in your experience in knowing how critically important essential amino acids are to the body? What would you say to somebody who eats, and this isn't, this is not a political vegetarian vegan debate. It's strictly about nutrition. What would you say to somebody who eats only, let's say, a vegan diet? Then these are the individuals that really need to assess and look at opportunities to support their aging with amino acids, because that's going to be a problem, right? As they age,
Yeah, I
especially.
think that earlier you were talking about dietary quality, dietary protein quality, and that it's function of the digestibility or bioavailability, as you referred to it, as well as the amount and profile of the essential amino acids in the protein. And by and large, the animal proteins are much higher quality in terms of the amount of amino acids and the digestibility than plant-based proteins. And this is why historically people have always thought of the protein foods being meat, fish, poultry, things like dairy, things like this. In the vegan diet, it's going to be lower quality protein, meaning that you're not going to have as much essential amino acids. You're not going to have the ideal profile relative to requirements. And so the vegan diet is really not going to be any limitation for a young, healthy person, because the metabolic flexibility of being able to eat a variety of foods and still being able to function well. But as you get older, the requirements become much more rigid, and more demanding, and it becomes harder and harder to satisfy those requirements through any dietary means, and particularly with the vegan diet. And it's certainly not that these amino acids were targeting specifically a vegan diet, but with that thought in mind, the people that are moving towards that that practice of both vegan as well as vegetarian, that the process of producing these amino acids, we use only approaches that are vegan in the production of the amino acids, so that they are applicable to someone that is looking to try to smooth out their lack of intake of essential amino acids by taking a dietary supplement, but are uncertain about, is this going to kind of invalidate my vegan diet? And that's why we have used vegan sources to be able to produce the amino acids. And of course, it's not going to hurt somebody that's not a vegan to have a vegan source of amino acids, because the amino acids are they're just the amino acids. But the process whereby we've obtained those amino acids can vary. One of the most popular ways and cheapest ways to get the amino acids that are used in dietary supplements are taking duck feathers and digesting the duck feathers, because they're used, particularly it's mostly in China where those amino acids come from, and they eat a lot of ducks. And so when they take the feathers and they hydrolyze them and isolate the amino acids from those duck feathers, and so and that's a lot of the products that are available. And if it doesn't specifically cite vegan produced products, it almost surely is coming from duck feathers, which is not going to be compatible with a vegan diet or a vegetarian diet. So that, again, there's just a whole bunch of things you have to think about as an educated consumer. And life is not easy if you're a vegan to have proper protein nutrition. And so I think that the use of the essential amino acid supplements really are important in that particular population.
I agree. Because I've always been a big proponent as a nutritionist of a balanced diet. Always balance. You see some nutritionists who are all about being carnivore, and then there's keto, and then and I'm just like, eat a balanced diet, variety of foods, and then supplement when you need to and add in what you need. Because the fact is I know my digestion isn't great. So maybe you can explain that, Dr. Wolfe, why does that happen? It's almost like 40 is like this age where a lot of people start to have issues with digestion, and they're not properly digesting or assimilating the proteins that they're eating, but they can properly digest straight up amino acids.
Yeah, I think that that's an important distinction because when you eat a dietary protein, it has to be digested. There have to be digestive enzymes that are secreted into the intestines, and then over a period of time, those enzymes degrade the protein, and the amino acids released from that degraded or digested protein are then absorbed. The efficiency of that process, unfortunately, goes down as you get older.
Mm.
The process of absorption of the free amino acids is an entirely different process, and that is they're directly absorbed in the stomach and the start of the duodenum in the same way that glucose is absorbed. Doesn't need any digestion. They're already in the free form. So that with the free essential amino acids, there's 100% absorption of whatever is eaten. So that when you take, let's say, 5 grams of a particular amino acid formulation, then exactly 5 grams is going to come into your body. Whereas if you're an older person and you eat soy protein, for example, it may be as low as 50 to 60% of the amino acids in that soy protein will be absorbed by an older person. So you think you're eating a certain amount, but you're really not eating. You're not even getting that amount into your body. So that those are aspects of the rationale for using the free amino acids. That was an important consideration, that these are rapidly digested. They don't, also you eat protein, high protein, and big steak, you're usually not hungry for the next meal very well. And if you're trying to stimulate somebody's eating, like an older person, it's important that one meal doesn't inhibit the amount of food you eat in the next meal. Well, with the free amino acids, they're absorbed completely within 20 minutes, so that it doesn't have any impact on the next meal one way or the other. And the thing that was kind of a surprise, though, was that it turns out because the amino acids are absorbed much more rapidly from a free form that we give in the supplements, that the blood levels rise much more rapidly into higher value than when you eat a dietary protein that's coming in over, the amino acids are coming in over several hours. And that this high rapid increase in the signaling of the high rapid increase in the amino acids leads to signaling properties of specific amino acids that target molecular mechanisms in the cells that activate the whole process of protein synthesis that never are activated by a dietary protein, because the blood levels of the amino acids from a dietary protein rise very slowly. So that it turns out that one of the main things that we discovered with the benefit of the free amino acid formulations is that they serve not only as the building blocks for the protein, but actually as what we call nutraceuticals. And in some cases, these amino acids that are absorbed can activate metabolic processes that make the efficient utilization of those amino acids much greater and amplify the amount of protein that's produced from a given amount of absorbed amino acids. So that it turns out that the speed of digestion has a direct impact on how effective that meal is in stimulating protein synthesis.
That's fascinating because, okay, maybe you can tell me because I'm speaking to the expert because I take essential amino acids and depending on what's going on, but I definitely take them on days that I'm working out with my trainer. And so I've done them a couple of different ways. I've drank them 20 minutes before I work out, and usually the workout is involving weights. I've also had them while I'm working out. So I will have my water and I will drink them as I'm working out and I'll mix it with creatine. So what are your thoughts on that whole process?
Good.
It's good? Both
Yeah.
ways are good?
Yeah, no, it's good. I think that the benefit during exercise is going to be somewhat limited because even with the free amino acids, it takes a little bit of time to absorb it. The
Yeah.
thing to realize, and why I say good, is that if you don't take amino acids before you exercise, that the muscle protein actually breaks down and
Right.
releases amino acids, and you then have to rebuild those muscles after you're finished with the exercise. And if you take the amino acids before or even during the exercise, you'll actually get a real amplifying of the the effect of the exercise. The only thing I would say is that I would add the importance of taking some more amino acids in the recovery period, because
Ah,
that's when you really are building your muscle. What you're doing in the with the preload is two things. One is that you're activating the neurotransmitters in your brain that are produced from the essential amino acids, and you're optimizing that balance between the dopamine and the tryptophan, which lead to the production of serotonin. So the serotonin makes you feel tired and sleepy. The dopamine makes you really feel jacked up. You want to have a formulation like Perform that will optimize the dopamine to serotonin ratio so that you're mentally ready to go. And those amino acids that you've taken slow down or stop the breakdown of protein during exercise. But the real buildup of protein when you're finished is the primary, what we call the anabolic response. And so you want to take aminos or something like Heal that has some amino acids and whey protein together, take those after the exercise as well. And I think that you'll also find an effect if you take the amino acids after aerobic exercise as well. That with the aerobic exercise, you do increase the metabolism of all your amino acids. And so replacing those is an important aspect of maintaining a good protein turnover and muscle health, even though you're not trying to build muscle mass. What you're trying to do is improve the function. And that's where we really focus on with the formulations of the amino acids, is to make the quality of the protein in the body improve much more so than focusing on the muscle mass.
right, right. And I think this is important that I ask you this because so many women around my age, they go on these, fad diets. And I personally I lost 4% total body fat, and that was in 2022, and I maintained it, and I maintained my muscle. So throughout, I made sure that I wasn't losing the essential amino acids in my diet. I was taking Amino Co. I've been taking it all along. And I think it's important to tell like our audience about weight loss at midlife and how you could end up doing more harm than good by just going on any fad diet that's not a good quality diet and then not properly supplementing. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great point, and your experience is really
It's good.
inspiring, because the thing that I haven't mentioned that is underlying what the whole response, the whole response that you're referring to, is that this process of breaking down the muscle protein and rebuilding it requires energy. And about a third of the energy that we use in the whole body is just due to this process of protein turnover in the muscle. So as you lose muscle, you lose the production of energy from that muscle. So, for example, if you take a young, healthy, exercising young male and compare the muscle mass to a small 70-year-old woman who does no exercise, there might be as much as 10 kilograms of muscle mass difference. And the energy of difference between 10 kilograms of muscle translates to about 15 pounds of fat over an entire year. That's how important the maintaining the muscle mass is. So that all of these diets that result in a loss of body fat, but also a major loss in muscle, you're doomed to put that fat right back on, because what happens is your energy expenditure has gone down as you've lost the muscle mass. Now, when you go back to your normal diet, you're eating a normal diet, but you're actually expending less energy than you were before you ever dieted. And this is why the yo-yoing you can even go back higher than you ever started with on the body fat, because you have the same diet, but now you don't even have as much energy expenditure as you did before you went through the whole process of dieting. So much so that the NIH really won't sponsor any more studies on caloric restriction weight loss diets, because the recidivism at 1 year is about 98%, and meaning that about 2% of people that just do a random weight loss diet without paying attention to dietary protein. And in fact, the problem is, even if you are thinking, I'm going to eat a high protein diet in this weight loss, the calories don't add up. That you have to eat, your whole dietary intake has to be nothing but meat and fish and so forth, nothing else, because of the calories that go along with the dietary sources. So that it virtually is impossible to lose weight and only lose fat and maintain muscle unless you take the free essential amino acid supplements, which have very little caloric. It's a 15-gram dose, which would be a big dose of essential amino acids. It's only 60 calories. So that comparing that to a protein food like a big steak or something, or even a vegan diet, is still not going to provide the same support of the muscle mass, but you're going to be eating much more calories. So that I'd really go so far as to say that in weight loss, to maintain your weight loss over a long period of time, not just drop it for the wedding and then put it back on again, but it requires essential amino acid supplements. I don't know that it's really possible for the average person to maintain their muscle mass over a year and lose a significant amount of body weight. And that, well, of course, if you're doing extensive exercise, and I mean, there are things you can do, but the reality is most people, they lose the weight and then within a year it's back up to where it started or even higher. And then the reason is they haven't maintained their muscle mass.
Yeah, I guess the key is metabolic flexibility, right? You want to maintain that. And I think it's even harder when a woman is going through menopause, because then you've got all these other factors coming into play, like hormones. So, it gets kind of
Yeah.
complicated. So,
Yeah,
I
that's
wanted,
we just started a pretty substantial research project on the effect of menopause, because the loss of muscle is significant without anything changing anything. All of a sudden, you're losing muscle,
yeah,
and
yeah,
it's actually kind of a it's hard to understand. That's why it's a real new area for us to delve into, because with the hormonal changes, you wouldn't necessarily predict that muscle would be lost, because, for example, estrogen is certainly not thought of as an anabolic hormone. But regardless of whatever is thought, there's no doubt that with menopause, you do lose muscle mass, and that contributes to the fact that it becomes much harder to maintain a body weight because your energy expenditure has decreased.
yeah, Yeah, it gets very complicated. But somehow I managed to do it. So there you
Yeah.
go. And now we're in 2024 and I'm staying, status quo. So
Yeah,
it's
no, I
all
think you just have to, anytime you eat a dietary protein or the amino acids, you get a stimulation of your metabolic rate due to the fact that you're stimulating the protein synthesis in your body, and that revs up the energy expenditure. And so the balance between how much calorie you eat in the protein form versus how much energy is involved in stimulating protein synthesis is crucial. So that with the essential amino acids, you're not eating much in the way of calories, but you're getting a big response in terms of the energy expenditure, protein turnover. So that's going to be much more effective in maintaining your weight loss than eating a protein that has a lot of triglycerides and other fat or carbohydrates that mean that, yeah, your energy expenditure is increased, but you've taken a lot of calories in to get that increase in energy expenditure. So the net really doesn't help you out.
right, right. Speaking of, now let's get into the absorption a little bit because I know I saw something on the AminoCo's website about bioavailability. And I think you had a chart from what I recall of vegetarian source of protein powders, whey source of protein powders, and then essential amino acids by AminoCo and absorbability of those. It's a huge difference.
It really is. And I think it's totally unappreciated that some of the dietary protein sources have as low as 50% of what amino acids are in the protein are actually absorbed. And those are what a lot of people consider high quality proteins, like nuts and uh, seeds and things that comprise a lot of people's everybody's diet. And you think, that you're eating, for example, the dietary guidelines suggest eating peanut butter as a source of dietary protein. But you would need to get your essential amino acid requirements for peanut butter, you'd have to eat twice the number of calories as your total energy expenditure to get that from peanuts because they're only about 40% of the amino acids in the protein are absorbed. And that process goes down, like I can speak from experience. As you get older, just about everything goes downhill, and the digestion and absorption is
Oh, don't say that.
definitely yeah, maybe experience would be about the only thing that might be different. But it does get worse. There's no that it's just one of those things that makes the changing it up by adding the free amino acids really is important because it is 100% absorbed. The bioavailability is 100%, and it's going to be whatever you think you're taking, that's what you're getting, as opposed to eating protein supplements from something like a pea protein. It may only be 60, 70% absorbed. So you're not getting anywhere near as much as you think you are to begin with.
Okay, let's get into mTOR because I think this is the big argument about limiting protein because of stimulating mTOR as we age. And it shortens your life, right? Shortens lifespan, doesn't it?
No, I don't think
Can you
there's any
explain it
evidence
to me?
that what
Can you explain?
mTOR is.
Because it's
There's a
important.
whole sequence of molecular events that occur in the body that are involved in the initiation of protein synthesis. And mTOR is kind of the pivot point. When mTOR is activated, then that tends to activate all the downstream molecules that ultimately end up in the initiation of protein synthesis. The role of mTOR in controlling protein metabolism in the body in most circumstances, not all, but in most circumstances, you can call permissive, meaning that you have to have a certain degree of activity. But as you're sitting there in that chair, you have enough mTOR activity that if you take some free amino acids, it's going to be incorporated into protein. It's only in conditions like aging or critical illness or catabolic states where you're losing protein that mTOR isn't activated to the extent necessary to really optimize the response to dietary protein intake. So that there's a lot of focus on, particularly in aging, specific amino acids such as leucine, or even all the essential amino acids to some extent, can activate mTOR, meaning that the cell is now more receptive to the amino acids that are coming into the body to be able to incorporate them into protein. The concern about the mTOR activation that has been expressed for a long time is that you don't want that mTOR is involved in the activation of protein synthesis of all the cells in your body, whether they're the cells you want to have there or whether they're cells you don't want to have there, like cancer cells. And so doesn't it figure that if you're going to activate the protein synthesis in the cancer cells, that you're going to stimulate the growth of cancer? And the problem that is not the case, and this has been looked at for years and years, because the main problem that has always plagued people with cancer is the loss of muscle mass and all the other proteins in the body, to where the defense against any sort of infection or other problems is so weakened that in many cases the malnutrition is as much as cause of the ultimate demise as the lack of or the presence of the cancer, to the point where you can't really withstand the rigors of chemotherapy and radiation therapy because you're so weak from losing so much protein. The reason you're losing that protein is that it's what we call the stress response, where the amino acids are broken down in the muscle. The muscle is broken down, releases amino acids into the blood, and goes to the cancer cells where they are used for protein synthesis. The regulation of protein synthesis in the cancer cell is the highest metabolic priority. So that it was thought, well, if we just starve the individual, that cancer won't grow. It won't have anything to grow on. Well, that's not what happens. What happens is it starts eating up the muscle and other tissues in the body to get the amino acids it needs to keep the protein synthesis going. So that when you provide amino acids or protein to someone that has cancer, you're not stimulating the protein synthesis in the cancer, you're repleting the muscle protein that's been lost, being broken down to provide the amino acids to the cancer cells. The cancer cells are going to get their nutrition, whether it be from whatever you provide or from breaking down the body itself. If it wasn't the case, then the treatment for cancer would be to just stop eating and the cancer cells would die because they wouldn't have the nutrition it needs. But that doesn't happen. What happens is the rest of the body shrivels up and the cancer thrives because the cancer is eating up the rest of the body. So it's really one of the most harmful misunderstandings of the molecular regulation of protein metabolism, because it does not decrease life. If it is actually going to happen whatever pace the adverse response dictates, and it's the rest of the body that's going to suffer. So that so I think it's really emphatically that if you have any real critical illness or serious illness like cancer or COPD, we've looked at a whole variety of extremely serious diseases, and in all cases the benefit is in terms of the muscle without affecting the cancer growth.
I am so glad that you actually clarified that, because there are so many people in this space of health span and lifespan who are afraid of activating mTOR, and it's so talked about. And I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but I find it really complex.
Yeah,
And
well, it is, and I think that in fairness, there's a lot still to be learned about mTOR, but there's a very poor correlation between mTOR activity and the rate at which protein is produced. And as I said, for the most part, mTOR is at a high enough state of activation that if you completely block its activity, there's still enough left that normal response to meals can occur. So I think that it is been a very convenient thing to look at because it is involved in the process of protein synthesis. But unfortunately, just a mythical importance has grown around it because there's absolutely no evidence to support the claim that it actually regulates the rate of protein synthesis. It's involved. You have to have it at a certain level of activity. But protein synthesis is not, whether it's like as you're sitting there right now, if you were to eat a big sandwich and your protein synthesis increased, mTOR would have nothing to do with that. A change in mTOR activity would not even be measurable. And if it was measurable, it would only be measurable in the first 15 minutes after you ate the sandwich, and you're not even digesting all the amino acids yet. So it's just not as big a player in the actual physiology as the molecular biologists who that's what they measure. So obviously there's a lot of importance put on it, but they haven't considered mTOR in the context of the whole physiology of the body.
Thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate that because there's so much confusion around it. Okay, so let's get into some of the formulations that AminoCo has, because I know there's health and heal. Sorry, heal. I actually had my son on that one. He had a pretty major shoulder reconstruction, and I was pretty impressed because he, mind you, he's young. He's not my age. So I would hope that he heals better than I would. But you have very specific formulations, and the heal has whey protein, but also essential amino acids in the correct ratios to help you heal and recover. Correct?
Yeah, and that formulation was developed in controlled settings of known stress, which was the hip surgery, hip replacement, and knee replacement, which is a major stress to the body with a very defined pattern of healing. And the reason we added the whey protein is that in certain circumstances, whey protein in its digestion has what's called di and tripeptides, which are 2 or 3 amino acids linked together that have a specific beneficial effect in the healing process. And also so much new protein has to be made that having a small amount of the non-essential amino acids, which are also in the whey protein, augment the essential amino acid response. That being said, the whey protein alone still isn't enough because the amino acid levels and availability in the blood don't go high enough. And so that's where the additional amino acids sort of supercharge the whey protein effect. And it really is designed for serious injury. But what we found is that it also is quite effective as a post-workout beverage, because with a particularly resistance exercise, you actually do break down your muscles and you rebuild them. And that process of breaking down and rebuilding the protein is important in the strength gain. And so it really is a healing process. It's not as bad as your son's shoulder problem, but at the same time, it is a beneficial effect of healing or restoring the muscle that's lost during the exercise.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen it. I've seen it work. Obviously, he
Yeah,
had
no,
his mama
it's quite
cooking for
effective
him.
in the hip replacement and knee replacement. It improved recovery time about 50%.
That's
But
amazing.
yeah, quite
50%?
dramatic. Yeah, with no other specific exercises that differed. They were treated. It was just a double-blind study where the doctors didn't know what they're getting and the patients didn't know what they're getting, and about a 50% more rapid improvement in rehabilitation than in the placebo group.
That is huge. Now, we touched on liver, and I guess I don't know what studies were done specifically for the liver essential amino acids.
The liver studies have focused. We've had 4 different studies published in liver, ranging from healthy elderly who have, as it turns out, very commonly fat infiltration of the liver, which affects liver function, and alcohol-induced liver fat, and even liver fat in adolescent girls with polycystic ovary syndrome that also have liver fat. And what we found is that the mechanisms in these varied applications all stem from the same issues related to an imbalance of the amino acid levels in the liver. And in each of these cases, we've documented the decrease in the liver fat by about 50%, 30 to 50%, documented by MRI measurements of the actual amount of liver fat. And along with that, other aspects of liver function that you have there are various enzymes that are released into the blood, like ALT and other things you see in your blood tests that you may not recognize what they are, but they're aspects of liver function that they're reflecting, and all of these have been significantly improved. And the triglycerides in the blood have also been lowered in all of these studies. So that what we've done is match the profile of the product, the liver product, I think it's called cleanse, with the metabolic changes that occur in the liver that lead to the deposition of fat, and enable the person to lose body fat, even though they aren't losing body weight necessarily. That's an effective way to reduce liver fat as well. But a lot of people don't reduce their food intake. The point is that you can have liver fat even if you're not particularly overweight, as the heavy use of alcohol will document. But that in all of these people, reduction of liver fat is a crucial component of restoring liver health. So that's where we really focus on the liver fat, and then these other things that go along with it have also been affected as well.
I'm just curious, how long were the study participants taking the liver formulation?
Well, the longest was 16 weeks, but we've seen positive effects with 4 weeks.
That's amazing.
Of course, now with the 4 weeks, if you stop taking it, then without making any other changes in lifestyle, then it'll go right back. So that's one of the things about nutrition. You have to keep after it or make some changes in your overall diet or exercise or whatever to maintain the loss. But the girls with the PCOS, that paper is just being published, and that was a 4-week study which showed that they and each girl in the study had 4 weeks on and 4 weeks on the placebo, neither knowing which one was which. And there's a significant benefit in the aminos in that group without any weight loss. It's just a specific manipulation of the metabolism of the liver.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Now, you have Perform, and do you have 2 more formulations?
Yeah, the Perform we touched briefly on. The Perform is largely focused on optimizing the neurotransmitters in the brain, the ratios of dopamine to serotonin, and that ratio is affected by the essential amino acids because the precursors of the production of those neurotransmitters are essential amino acids, tryptophan in the case of serotonin, and phenylalanine and tyrosine in the case of dopamine. So that's the main effect, but we've also combined it with the other essential amino acids so that there also is this effect of maintaining muscle mass during an exercise. But the main target is to sort of activate your excitement, enthusiasm, and lack of fatigue to start and maintain a workout while also inhibiting the breakdown of protein. And the final product is the original starting point that I had. It's called Life, which was targeting healthy elderly. It was targeting the issues related to aging, and specifically to maintain muscle mass and function in older individuals.
That's the one I take regularly.
Yeah, well, I think that's the most general. That activates mTOR, to come back to mTOR, and it increases the ability to oxidize fat, and it also is important in the production of nitric oxide. The precursor for nitric oxide production is citrulline, which is in that formulation, which then produces nitric oxide, which is crucial in the vasoregulation of your blood vessels, so that it will lower blood pressure in people that have high blood pressure, and give you a better matching of demand and supply for blood, so that when you do your exercise, the blood flow normally increases in your muscle because of nitric oxide, which becomes diminished as you age. But what we're doing is providing the precursor for the production of nitric oxide during the exercise so that you get a better blood flow to the muscles.
Oh, amazing. You
Yeah.
explain it so
And it, and
well.
it, and it seems to be quite effective in heart failure in particular. We published a big study with over 90 people in it, showing a beneficial effect on several aspects of functionality in older people with heart failure. That turns out that in heart failure, well, the heart is obviously an issue, that decreased functionality of muscle is a crucial component of the whole heart failure syndrome, such that that when you're able to support the muscle, then that enables you to do more exercise, which enables you to have a better impact on the heart.
That's amazing. This has been such a great chat. I feel like I could ask you at least, another 20 questions, but we have hit past the hour. So I just wanted to ask you just to summarize if there's anything that you wanted to talk about or mention that we forgot.
No, I'm just going to reiterate the point that I think I made pretty extensively, and that is that the consumer really needs to pay attention to exactly what their goal is with the nutritional supplement and what formulation actually best targets those goals, and is there research supporting that exact product rather than just the general idea of essentials, because that's where I think we really need to head in optimizing personal nutrition, is figure out what it is you want to promote and get the right formula for that activity.
Yeah, I love it. And I will say that AminoCo has incredible resources on their website. All of these studies that we talked about and much more is on the website, so you can find it there. Thank you so, so much for your time. I loved our chat and I love your wisdom. You have so much wisdom to share.
Well, thank you. I enjoyed the interview. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Wolf. Okay, I hit stop there and there.